Hello, friends, and welcome back to God's Story Channel. It's good to have you here again, finding a moment in your day to reflect on things that matter. First, I hope you're well, steady and strong. Health is one of those things we don't always think about until it reminds us. So here's wishing you good health, like a steady wind at your back, and may success come your way too, in whatever shape it takes. Maybe it's a bit of peace or a spark of joy, maybe just the sense that you're on the right path. The world has its challenges, but we keep on, step by step. Today we're exploring something timeless. It's a question that's been part of the human story since the beginning. What it means to honor those who've gone before, how we keep faith, and how we find peace in our choices. Maybe it's the choice between earth and flame, dust and memory. Whatever the choice, it's a path we all walk, sooner or later. What surprising insights does the Bible offer about cremation and resurrection? There is an old truth that speaks quietly, reminding us we are dust, and to dust we shall return. In each of our lives, the question of death is there, close by and inevitable, like a shadow on a bright afternoon. When that time comes, we are faced with choices: how best to honor those we've loved, how best to honor our faith. For many, the choice has long been burial, a return to the earth, grounded in tradition, familiar in its solemnity. The body laid to rest, a final act of love and respect, something. Across time and distance, people have approached death with reverence, and these traditions are rooted in faith and custom. In biblical times, burial was not simply a choice, it was a way of life. Abraham buried Sarah in the cave of Machpelah, and Jesus himself was laid in a tomb. The earth, sacred and steady, was a place for keeping and remembering. But now, as we move through a world that grows busier and more crowded, the ways we choose to honor the dead shift. Cremation is no longer a rarity, it's becoming the norm. Practicality, costs, and changing times drive this shift. And yet, in these new choices, there is still faith, still reverence. People wonder if cremation, the release of the body by fire, speaks against the resurrection. But faith, the kind that has lasted generations, looks beyond the form, beyond the method. So we come to the heart of it. Burial and cremation are two paths to the same place. Dust we are, and to dust we return. The journey remains sacred, no matter the choice. And with that, we look deeper, to understand how these changes echo through tradition and speak to our times. The numbers, the stories, they all point to something steady, the desire to honor and remember. Understanding modern cremation trends and choices around the world, the quiet tradition of burial is shifting. Where once there were fields, there are now buildings. Where land once stretched wide and free, there are now limits and choices to be made. Cremation has grown from a rare alternative to nearly standard in the United States. By 2021, it reached 57%, and projections see it climbing to 64% by 2025. In Italy, where centuries-old churches and cemeteries mark the landscape, cremation rose from less than 3% in 1995 to over 38% in 2023. PR. For many, cremation speaks to a new practicality. The costs are often one-third of what a burial would be, a significant difference for families navigating grief and financial limits. And then there is the land, places that once held space easily, feeling the pressure of population. In cities like Hong Kong, columbariums have become the answer, buildings that hold the ashes of loved ones in small, sacred spaces, a compromise with reality. The decision isn't just financial, though. Our world has changed. Families live miles, even continents apart, and the time it takes to gather is more than the body can wait. Cremation allows time. It lets ashes travel if needed, held in a way the body cannot. It offers families a way to honor their loved ones without rushing, without losing the chance to gather, to remember together. In Japan, cremation has been a practical necessity for centuries and is peacefully accepted. There, the crowded lands made it the logical choice, but the families who chose it do not mourn any less. Now, across different places and beliefs, cremation is not so much a departure as it is another way back to dust, as the Bible says. For dust you are, and to dust you will return. A different path, but the same truth. For some, though, cremation still feels foreign. Where graves and burial were a given, an expectation, cremation asks something new. The body is not there the same way. The earth isn't placed upon earth. Yet even in these new choices, families hold to old truths: honor, respect, a belief in the life that was lived, and the peace they hope remains. As more families choose cremation, it becomes woven into the fabric of faith and tradition. It is not an abandonment of what came before, but an adaptation. Each choice to cremate, whether for land, cost, or convenience, joins the rhythm of life and faith. This choice, like burial, is made in reverence, with respect for the sacred journey we all take. Burial versus cremation in the scriptures. In the beginning, the earth held the stories. Burial was a sacred act, a return to where life began. When Abraham buried Sarah in the cave of Machpelah, it was more than a place to rest. It was a statement of belonging, a promise kept. Abraham bought that land, not as property, but as memory, so that the dust of his beloved would be kept in the dust of the earth, safe and close. And it was the same for Jacob, for Joseph, all the patriarchs. They wanted the ground to hold them because the earth itself. Then came Jesus. In his last hours, he too was laid to rest, wrapped and placed in a tomb. The rock was sealed, and there, in that quiet place, the body remained. But the promise, the hope, lay beyond the grave. To his followers, burial wasn't an end. It was a mark of faith, a testament that the earth held not just bodies, but hope. The burial of Christ was more than tradition. It was a symbol that life, in some way, would endure. But fire, too, had its place in these ancient stories. The fire was a sign, powerful and transformative. It purified, it judged, it cleansed. In the days of King Josiah, the bones of false idols were burned on altars, turning them to dust as an act of purification. Fire was not for the faithful, yet it held a place in the stories, a way of transformation. Ahan's punishment was sealed with fire, a harsh sentence, but one that spoke to the power of flame in ancient hands. The fire had its reverence, though it rarely touched the realm. So here we stand, years away from those early days, wondering how the ancient ways fit the world we know now. Burial was then a testament to faith, a way to honor what was sacred. But the world is different. The caves that once held the dead are fewer, and the land, crowded and costly, cannot always hold us. The Bible, in its wisdom, leaves room for faith to find its way. Paul, in his letters, speaks of the body as a seed, sown into the earth with the hope it will rise anew. Burial was once a tradition, but it was also an image, a way of seeing beyond what was physical, and that is what remains. Whether by earth or fire, the promise of resurrection holds, not because of where we lay, but because of who we trust. And so, with the Bible as our guide, we see that faith endures even as customs change. The sacred is not lost in cremation or burial. It's kept in the promise, in the quiet trust that, in dust or flame, the soul finds its way back to its maker. The body, resurrection, and Christian beliefs. The body in the Christian faith is more than flesh. It is a vessel, a temple, crafted in God's image and bound to the soul. The Apostle Paul spoke of this mystery, calling believers to honor the body as the temple of the Holy Spirit. For early Christians, the body wasn't something to be cast aside or left in disrepair. It was a sacred thing, cared for in life and honored in death. And so they buried their dead in the earth, each burial a testament to the belief that the body would someday rise again. To those believers, the promise of resurrection was a hope as real as the soil beneath them. When Paul wrote his letter to the Corinthians, he used words like seeds and sowing to describe what would come. What you sow does not come to life unless it dies, he said. Burial was not just a way to rest the body, it was an act of faith, an image of what was yet to come. In those days, burial was a kind of planting, each grave a quiet promise that life would grow again. But time moved, and with it, the ways of death changed. People began to ask if cremation, the release of the body by fire, would stand against that hope. Could the body reduced to ash still rise? Was there a place in resurrection for those who return not to earth, but to air? In this, the faithful look deeper, beyond the form, and into the heart of the promise. For Paul, the resurrection was not tied to the state of the body, but to the power of God. The body, whether dust or ash, was but a shell. What mattered was the soul and the promise of transformation. Tertullian, one of the early church fathers, echoed this, saying that God, who made humanity from nothing, could restore even what had turned to dust. To the early Christians, the power of resurrection went beyond the physical, touching the eternal. Today, the choice between burial and cremation still stirs questions of faith and reverence. But believers find peace in the words that have lasted. For dust you are, and to dust you will return. Whether by earth or by flame, the journey ends the same, bound to the promise of life beyond life. The body, sacred in its own way, returns to its maker. Faith sees beyond the form, trusting in a God who holds each soul, no matter how it comes. This belief is what binds the faithful together, burial and cremation alike. The sacred remains, not in the method but in the meaning, in the unbroken trust that the body will be made new. And so, with this understanding, believers turn to their own choices, knowing that the promise endures in ways beyond what is seen. Personal and practical considerations for funeral choices. Ultimately, choices are made in the quiet of the heart, often where faith meets practicality. For many families, the choice between burial and cremation isn't made lightly. It's a decision shaped by love, by memory, and by what the world around them demands. Burial offers something solid, a place to go, a stone to touch, a way to remember. For centuries, this has been a comfort, a final resting place to visit when the days grow heavy. But as time moves, the world shifts with it. Land that was once open is crowded now, and cities feel the press of growth. Families, too, are spread further apart, across cities and states, sometimes oceans. In America, where time moves quickly, cremation gives families a way to hold on without the rush. There's time to gather, time to plan. Ashes can wait where the body cannot. And then there is the cost. Burial comes with expenses that, for many, are hard to bear. Plots, caskets, services, each one necessary, each one dear. Cremation, in many places, costs a fraction of this. A choice that eases financial strain without lessening love or memory. It's a way for families to honor the dead without the weight of debt and to keep the sacred without losing peace of mind. In cities like Hong Kong, where land is scarce, columbariums offer a place for ashes, small and sacred, where families can still find connection. In the US, the ashes of loved ones may be scattered in meaningful places, places that speak of life shared. Cremation for these families becomes more than practicality. It's a choice filled with the same reverence, the same honor. Yet even with this, there is still a weight to the decision. For those who grew up with burial, with the idea of earth upon earth, cremation feels different. It asks for a new understanding, a new way to grieve. There is no headstone, no ground to visit. But for many, this doesn't lessen the memory or the love. Families find new rituals and new ways to remember. When they choose cremation, they choose it with the same heart that has chosen burial for generations. The reverence remains and the honor is unchanged. And in that choice, there is peace, a knowing that the body, whether buried or burned, returns to its maker. The love is no less, and the memory stands. So as families walk this path, they find their way between tradition and practicality, each choice a testament to the life lived. It's not an abandonment of faith, but a quiet adaptation, a way to remember in a world that is changing. Burial or cremation, both are held in faith, both are ways of holding on, and both, in the end, bring the soul to rest. Cultural, ethical, and denominational insights into cremation. In different corners of the world, how we remember and honor the dead has always been shaped by land, by faith, and by custom. What feels natural in one place is foreign in another. In Japan, cremation is centuries old, a necessity born from crowded land and tradition. There, cremation is not seen as an alternative, but as the way. In Europe, where cathedrals stand as symbols of the old world, and in North America, where cemeteries stretch wide, burial was the familiar, the expected. But times change, and with them, customs. Across cultures, cremation is becoming more than a practical choice. It's part of the shifting rhythm of life and death. In places where land is scarce, like Hong Kong or Tokyo, columbariums offer spaces for ashes, small but meaningful, sacred in their own way. In these cities where every inch of space is used, cremation becomes not just a necessity, but a bridge between the living and the dead. The church, too, has changed with the times. Once, cremation was seen as a rejection of the faith, a challenge to the belief in bodily resurrection. But in 1963, the Catholic Church, a body of deep tradition, lifted its ban on cremation, allowing it under certain conditions. Today, the ashes must be stored in the sacred places, respected as one would a grave. Other denominations followed, accepting cremation as a practice that honors faith without breaking from it. And so, what was once separate begins to find a place within. For some, this shift brings relief. In the Catholic churches of Rome or the Protestant communities in America, people find a new way to keep faith with their loved ones. The focus turns from how the body is kept to how it is remembered. Cremation, once a choice for the few, becomes an option for many, held with the same reverence, the same respect. Still, there is an ache, a feeling of something left behind. The gravestones of family and tradition, the plots passed down through generations. They hold memories that are hard to let go of. Yet for many, the choice to cremate isn't a rejection of those memories, but an adjustment, a way to honor the old within the reality of the new. Each culture, each faith community finds its balance. Some embrace the flame as a symbol of purification, a transformation from the earthly to the eternal. Others hold to the ground, to the belief in earth's quiet holding. But wherever they land, these choices are bound in faith, in the same desire to remember, to honor, and to rest. In the end, the choice is deeply personal, yet shared by communities across borders. As burial and cremation come together, each practice finds a place in the global landscape of faith. Both hold the memory, both carry the sacred, and both, in their own way, mark the journey back to God. A thoughtful and faith-based decision. Ultimately, the choice between burial and cremation is one of faith and reverence. It's a decision made in quiet moments, with love and remembrance. For some, it's the weight of tradition, a return to the earth as it has always been. For others, it's a practical step, a new way to honor the old, shaped by the world as it is now. But at the heart of each choice is the same desire, to remember, to honor, to keep faith with those who came before. Burial holds a certain comfort, a familiarity that speaks of generations. It's a place to go, a stone to touch, a way to feel close when the years have stretched wide. For families, the grave is a place where memory feels solid, a ground where grief can rest. And for those who choose it, burial is more than tradition. It's a way to hold on, to keep the bond. But cremation too has found its place, woven into the rhythm of the present. For those who choose it, cremation isn't a departure from faith, but a step taken in trust. It's a choice made with care, with the same reverence that has always marked the farewell. Ashes kept or scattered, they speak of a life lived and love held close, a memory unbound by place. Cremation gives families time, a chance to gather, to wait until they're ready to let go. For believers, this decision is more than earth or fire. It's a reflection of the heart's hope. Paul's words about the body as a temple, sown like a seed to rise again, remind us that the form doesn't matter as much as the faith. The body, whether it returns to dust or ash, is only part of the story. The soul they trust returns to the God who made it. So as families stand at this crossroads, they know that faith holds space for both. Burial and cremation, each in their own way, bring peace. They are paths that lead to the same truth and ways of honoring what was, even as life moves forward. It's not a matter of which is right or wrong. It's a matter of what feels true, what brings comfort, and what carries love. In this world where traditions change and new ways arise, the faithful find their path. And in that path, there is grace, a quiet understanding that each choice holds its own reverence. Burial or cremation, both are acts of love. Both return the body to its maker. This is the heart of it, faith that does not waver, whether we return to dust by earth or by flame. The journey home remains sacred, each choice a testament to what we believe, to the lives we cherish, to the God we trust. Friends, life is filled with choices, and few are as personal as the journey in life's final chapter. We walk these paths bound by tradition, faith, and the ever-present curiosity about what lies beyond. So, in this spirit of discovery, I thank you for joining us today. As you move forward, I wish you health that sustains you, success that enriches you, and days filled with wonder. May you find peace in the choices you make and courage to face the unknown. I hope to see you here again on this road of exploration. In the meantime, feel free to share your thoughts, ask questions, and lend your voice to the dialogue. You're part of this journey as much as anyone else. If this time together has meant something to you, consider liking, subscribing, and sharing it with those dear to you. Let them share in what we've uncovered here. Until we meet again, take care and keep your heart open to life's mysteries. There's beauty in the journey,